Hi, this is Justin Colletti. You may know me from Sonic Scoop, but today I am on the Plugin Alliance channel, and we have the special treat of talking to Mr. Luca Pretolesi, a 5-time Grammy nominee who works extensively, particularly in the world of electronic music, although really across genres. He's gotten some Latin Grammys too. In fact, he's just nominated for a Grammy this year for a project he did with Diplo. He's worked with Major Lazer, Blackpink, and a whole bunch more. Luca, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, man. How are you?
Great to have you here.
Likewise.
The excuse we have for talking to Luca today is that he's just tried out a new plugin from DS Audio called Tantra 2. And this is obviously an update to their Tantra plugin. And this thing is pretty crazy. It's got a whole bunch of filters, modulators in there. There's a flanger, distortion, filter section, and what looks like a step sequencer up at the top of the thing. So before we get into talking about your approach to mixing and creative mixing versus technical mixing, what is Tantra 2? What makes it interesting and unique?
Well, Tantra 2 is very exciting, I think, for a mixing point of view. The fact that you have one single plugin with 7 different modules twice. So the same module twice. What that means is you can imagine you virtually take piece of gear with a virtual patch bay and move those modules around. You can reroute and move the routing in the order. So you can go from a low pass filter, from a distortion, a flanger, a delay, etc. Then go on the second phase, have the same plugin inside of the plugin and just use maybe for a static use. So you can do distortion with automation that you can add maybe on the snares, and you have the same distortion later to give an overall tone and vibe to the entire chain. That's pretty cool.
Right. So this thing is wild. It's not something that you're going to use to just kind of go in there and slightly sweeten up a snare drum and refine how much edge there is. It's a total reshaping tool. Can you give me a sense for what are some of the applications that you found to be the most valuable in so far?
Well, on the dance music space, there's a lot of tech house and progressive house right now that needs a sense of excitement going into builds. There is something that we call drops on dance music. Drops is the chorus, is the main part of the song. Now, going from verse to pre-chorus into the chorus, the pre-chorus, we always struggle to find a way to create some excitement on the mix without pulling 15 different plugins and rebuild the mix. So this is a perfect scenario. When you have one single plugin, you can literally have 7 different action going on the build. Imagine 16 bars build into the chorus. We can automate a filter. We can open a reverb going from dry to wet. We can essentially keep going based on our imagination, but very simple use, straightforward plugin without going crazy on CPU and going into the phase of freezing tracks and cutting tracks and parallel tracks. That's very straightforward. We can apply on the drum bus or even on the stereo bus and just automate 8 bars, 16 bars, get creative and go back into the mix.
And just so people understand what's in here, we're talking about those modules being a filter section, a distortion section, a delay section, dedicated lo-fi section, a flanger section, a glitch section. And would you find yourself using just one or two of these or a whole bunch of them in conjunction with one another? What are some of the use cases for having that many modules built in?
Got it. The use case essentially is, to me, just out of the box, when I put my hands on it, was like, okay, let's see if I think in this way. I'm a sound designer guy now. I want to redesign the groove and the movement of that. I might use a filter that's a pass filter, high pass filter that automate with a groove, and using actual internal step sequencer, I'm able to really quick try on a 16 notes, on 8 notes, and re-groove in some way the envelope of the drums. But then thinking, okay, what about now if we put like a reverb, the reverb open up in every upbeat. So it's essentially, it's very musical. And how refreshing is for us, kind of like mixing engineer, master engineer that always have a very static approach of make it warmer, make it brighter, just make it exciting. So it's almost going back to my production roots, during the mixing process. Super fun.
Yeah, that's what it really strikes me as, is more of a producer's tool that you can open up in the mix. And can you give me a sense for When are you allowed to cross that line? Because with a tool like this, you can easily cross that line and do things that people consider record production and not just mixing. Like, when can you get away with that? Do you have to have a rapport established with a client? Would you just pull it out in certain sections and think you can get away with it? Or is there a conversation you have to have first that I can totally reshape things with this, and can I get away with that?
Conversation for sure. I think on the client base that I feel like I'm the finisher on certain for certain producers, though I'm kind of like the quality control director, where I need to respect 100% the production decision, versus with other producers like Diplo, for example, we are more a team. So I feel if I have a creative idea that can bring something to the production, I feel very comfortable and confident to say, hey, what about if we do this on the bridge? And maybe I send like a test mix with my idea and it might say, thumbs up, let's go for it,
Now, if you're going to use a tool like this to radically reshape things and kind of change the groove of a bridge, that kind of thing, are you doing that kind of early on in the mix process before you fine-tuned everything, or are you kind of doing your fine-tuning first and then going in and totally reshaping things? Is there a perfect time and place to do this in a mix?
That's a great point. So I have a template, the way I treat my mixes with busing system. One thing I noticed with Tantra, that essentially the easiest way for me is to create a new bus that I can reroute essentially what I want to go through that and then get out. So essentially I can say, hey, the song is out to any creative processing, but when I get to the build, I simply cut those 4 tracks and I separate the busing system and I apply it to the bus. So in that way, I can make a decision that is really strategic on a place on the song that can really create an improvement. And then back on the question before, I don't feel that it's essential to think this as a tool that we need to reinvent everything. There can be a very light little things. For example, I notice if I use a little bit of beat crushing, just add a little bit on a beat of my snare and hats and just slightly parallel, maybe 10%, 20%. I don't think the producer will feel like, oh, wow, you reinvent my production or you retouch my production. It feels like you enhance a little bit my production. And that's interesting. So I recommend, if you go from a production mindset versus a mixing mindset, to find a middle ground. And just when you work as a mixer engineer, if you feel that you're stepping into the production space, just have a conversation.
Right. So although this tool can be absolutely savage, you can use it in subtle ways. And I like what you were talking about the idea of, since there's so much automation capability built into it, that step sequencer, you can kind of enhance things at just moments in time or only when certain elements are hitting. Looks like there's so much automation inside this tool to begin with, but I imagine you can use additional automation on top of that inside your DAW.
Yes. One interesting fact is, if we use the potential of automate everything on the plugin side, but be able to do simply on and off of the modulation that we have from the DAW side. So essentially, if we have a loop of 16 bar, with certain things happen, but then we want to do middle of the chorus, the first, let's say 8 bars of the chorus, it's free from any type of pattern, rhythmic pattern. But then the second part, we want to activate it. There is a very simple way to do it. I use Studio One, but any DAW works, where essentially we do on and off of every modulation internally of Tantra out on your DAW. So the DAW, essentially you turn on right now all the reverb automation and then goes off. Now you turn on all your like distortion automation goes off. So you can use as on and off, or you can even automate as a level. Imagine like a mix knob that you can automate the level of reverb. Now, one very smart thing about Tantra, that you have a possibility to activate and automate the rhythm, let's say on the reverb, using the step sequence. As well, you can go into your DAW and do a different type of automation at the same time. So you can do a build a reverb, but at the same time, you can do a pattern or reverb snapping automation on the same parameter. So it's very powerful on that.
Well, really excited that you were able to try this out and show off what you tried out. We have some videos coming out with you right here on the Plugin Alliance channel where people can see and hear your approach to using this tool in a mix. Can you give us a sneak preview? What are a couple of the elements you used it on?
Oh, yeah. So on this demo, I put Tantra on a drum bus, but I left the kick drum out of the drum bass on purpose to be able to process the rest of the drums with a certain pattern. Now, at one point, I even tried to put a plug from the synth bass into the Tantra bass, essentially, and have that working together. One of the highlights, and I recommend to pay attention on that on Tantra, you can apply multiple modulation, essentially with the same pattern to different plugins. So you can have the reverb, for example, and distortion to behave in the same way from the same modulation. So the way we open up reverb and distortion is not double that, but essentially use one modulation to make different module do the same thing. So creating this reverb plus distortion, it makes something very unique. And it sounds very complicated if you listen, but it's actually very easy to achieve that result.
Right. Brilliant. I think when you can have a plugin that is this versatile, but you can very quickly and easily get kind of crazy results with it, I think that's what's going to make people actually use this thing and keep on using it, is although it can do so much, you can kind of get to some wild reshaping places fairly quickly. It seems like a fairly intuitive layout to me. If you've ever used these types of filters before, ever used a step sequencer before, I think people are going to find their way around on this pretty fast. All right. Well, Luca, thanks so much for taking the time to join us for this quick interview about Tantra 2 from DS Audio and Plugin Alliance. People want to catch up with you and find out more about what you're doing. What are the best places to find you on the web?
Well, I'm very active on Instagram. So sometimes I do funny stuff from the studio, sometimes just share my work. So I recommend to follow me on Instagram or follow Studio DMI.
All right. Make sure you're keeping up with Luca at his website, his Instagram page, and so on. And make sure you're keeping up with Plugin Alliance as well. If you want to try out this plugin or anything else that Plugin Alliance makes totally for free, just go over to plugin-alliance.com. That's plugin-alliance.com, where you can try out this or any other plugin they make for free for 2 weeks. Or just go ahead and get the mega subscription bundle already. If you don't have it already, it's one of the biggest steals in the world of pro audio. I say that every time, because it's true, and I use it every day. All right, thanks again for hanging out with us. This has been Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop, this time on the Plugin Alliance channel. See you next time.